to sort of reduce, your interview time. Okay.
Please, Anna, let's start.
はい、じゃあ、すごく大変でインタビュー疲れなさっているんで、ちょっと30分の予定だったんですが、目標的には20分でやりたいと思っております。あとですね、さっきちょっと相談したんですけれども、講演会とかテレビのインタビューとかいろんなところで、もう報道されているものを皆さんご覧になっていると思うんで、原爆投下が必要だったかとか、なんで日本に来たのかとか、そういうあまりベーシックな質問じゃなくて、もっとフォローアップのような質問、あんまり部下でされてないような質問を優先的にしていただきたいと思います。プラスこの場は本来は独占インタビューができなかった社や団体やミニメディアとか、そういうところに、ネットメディアとか、お時間を提供したいっていう、目的で最初スタートした、それで提供している時間なんで、その辺考慮なさって、そういう団体や会社に優先的に質問していただきたいと思っております。で、和訳はだから質問の英訳はしますけども、答えの和訳はもう本当シンプルなものにさせていただきたいと思います。
はい、もういいですか。
じゃあそうです。じゃあこちらでまずこちら。はい。
6日と昨日8日と9日今日原水教の原水爆禁止世界大会に参加をしていただいて、その世界大会に参加をした感想をお願いします。以上です
You attended 3 Gensuikyo events.
Three what events?
3 Gensuikyo events.
Yeah.
One on the 6th, one on the 8th, and the big one today.
Right.
Yeah. What's your thought on this? What's your impression of those 3 events, Gensuikyo?
You'll forgive me, I'm a little bit tired right now because I've been doing a lot. The heat today was very strong in the park, and so I felt a little bit of heat stroke. It's been an exhausting trip. I came here last Sunday. It's Friday. It's 5 days of intense travel and interviews with press as well as Hibakusha.
Hibakusha.
That's why I said Hibakusha.
Yeah.
I said that.
I assumed you were going to get it wrong. Maybe I didn't.
I think I'm so tired that the 3 conferences, I would say, represented some of the highest consciousness of the people of Japan. These people who came to those conferences are dedicated to the historical memory, knowing the past, and the pursuit of peace in the present. I think that is the best part of Japan, the moral integrity of Japan. So I felt very much that they were on our side. It was interesting to talk to them a little bit about history because I have a strong doubt, as I said to the audience, that they know their own history in Japan. I think that the war stunted them, blinded them, numbed them, the pain and the suffering, I understand that the Japanese government did not give much information to the people. So they did not know a lot about the war crimes or the treatment by the militarists, the Japanese militarists of Asians in China, Korea, Southeast Asia, as well as the Caucasian prisoners of war in the British and American and other nationalities. It was the people have been denied their own history in the same way that as Peter pointed out, the same way that American people have been denied their own history. Because we had the same occupation force. In America, we had the U.S. government was occupying our country. They still do. And they took over Japan quickly. There was no talk about the A-bomb here. They couldn't even mention the word, I gather. There was a sort of strict censorship about the issue. The Hibakusha were treated badly and denied medical treatment for a long time. People were dying of radiation. There's a lot of confusion. So naturally people, you see, they didn't have that sense of re-education that they got in Germany after World War II. The Japanese people were not re-educated. They were used as pawns in a war that the U.S. government had in Asia with communism. And it's because the Korean War happened so quickly, there was no chance to rethink our policy in Japan. We used Japan as the launching point for the Korean War. And ever since, Japan has been used in Vietnam. It was used in the Kuwait War to pay for many things. It was used in the Iraq War. Okinawa has been used time and again. Japan has never recovered its own identity as far as I can see, and its sovereignty. You've had a string of prime ministers that I don't recognize. The only ones that stood out were socialist or liberal in the sense that they wanted some changes and they were unable to achieve them. Hatoyama, we're meeting him in Tokyo Monday. I'm looking forward to meeting him. He was a hope for change in Okinawa, but Obama got rid of him. Obama helped get rid of him. The electorate got rid of him. That's my impression.
その答えから発展して随分いろんなことを言ってくれたんで非常に良心的な団体だと思いました。大変、歴史問題とか平和問題とかに頑張っている人がたくさん来ていて、感心しました。歴史問題を言うと、日本は結局戦争中市民に何が起こっているか知らされてなかった。市民はその歴史を知る権利を剥奪されていたわけですね。だからアジアに対してした加害なんかもアジアとか捕虜に対してねしていた日本軍の加害なんかも日本人自身が知らされなかった。でアメリカ人も歴史を知らされてなかったわけですよね。アメリカはその日本を占領して原爆に対してその報道統制みたいなのを敷いてアメリカ人も知ることができなかったわけですね。で被爆者はそうやって放射能の被害を浴びて今に至るということですね。だから必要なのは、再教育、リエデュケーションという言葉を使ってましたけど、じゃあドイツ人では再教育が成功した例だったと思います。日本の人はちゃんと再教育されてないような気がします。それはアメリカに利用されていたというのもあります。戦後すぐに、特に朝鮮戦争の時にね、共産主義の盾みたいな形で、利用されてきましたね。ベトナム戦争でも利用された、クウェートでも利用された、沖縄はずっと利用され続けてきているわけですね。で私が思うのは日本は戦後自分のアイデンティティというのをちゃんと回復することがまだできていないんじゃないかと思います。そういう社会主義的なリーダーとかリベラルなリーダーが失敗させられてきています。例えば鳩山元首相がいます。沖縄に対して沖縄の基地を減らして何か希望を持たせるようなことを、そういうビジョンがありましたけど結局オバマ政権に失敗させられました。鳩山元首相には東京で会いますけれども楽しみにしています。じゃあいきますか。
昨日シンポジウムに出まして、Iwj インディペンデントウェブジャーナルの岩上と申します。昨日シンポジウムに出席しまして、監督が日本人に対してとても大きなクエスチョンを出しました。日本人は素晴らしいのになぜ朝鮮人、中国人に対して残酷な真似をしたのかということ。この宿題を考えていたときに、監督の本を読んでいるとね、ヒントがあった。日本はですね、帝国なんだ。古くてリニューアルされた小さな帝国。アメリカは歴史が新しくて、そしてまた新しくなっている大きな帝国で、とても似通っています。で、この2つの帝国的素質を持つ日本とアメリカが今軍事的に一体化しようとしている。この状態は大変危険だと思います。その点についてどのようなご見解をお持ちかお話し願いたいと思います。
日本が小さな帝国っていうのは今そういう状態。
地域的に東アジアの地域帝国であろうとするそういうエモーションをいつも持っているということです。そしてそれは非常に古くから持っている。日本書紀の時代から持っている。
今もあるってことです。
そういうエモーションがある。
Okay, I'm Iwakami from Independent Web Journal. Okay, I attended the symposium last night, and you asked us, why were the Japanese so cruel? Why were they, so cruel to Koreans and China? And I was, I meant to answer that question, and I was reading through your book, and then I thought that Well, Japan is an old empire, and it's sort of, they continued even after the war, and it's still a small, continued to be a small empire to date, and still having a sort of a wish to be an imperialistic power, over other Asian nations. So that sort of pre-war mentality is still continuing into today. And so there's Japan, the small empire, and there's the United States, the big empire. And there seems to be increasing military integration between this small empire and the bigger empire. What's your thought on this?
Why don't you lead, Peter?
Well, the whole question about cruelty is a universal issue. People can be made to be cruel anywhere. We talk about Guatemala. We talk about how the soldiers in Guatemala were deliberately hardened by submerging them in human feces and then making them stay that way for hours and hours and hours and abusing them and not giving them enough food and beating them. And then what do? They go and they attack villages in Guatemala in 1983, take babies by the feet and smash their heads on rocks. What kind of human being could do that? The same thing with the United States. War has become increasingly anonymous, increasingly impersonal, increasingly distant. We have people now sitting in rooms in Utah or in California sending drone planes to attack. They can see it as if it's a war game on a screen, and then they attack individuals and kill them far away. When Oliver fought in Vietnam, there was something a little bit more face-to-face with the enemy. Now we don't even know our enemies. Japan's cruelty during World War II, Japan was in some ways, the propaganda from Japan was directly parallel to the propaganda from the United States. The Americans treated the Japanese as vermin, as insects, as cockroaches, as monkeys in our propaganda. The Japanese had that same treatment of the Americans, and they had even worse treatment of other Asians. So as Japan, under the Meiji Restoration, tried to become westernized, and the attitude was the other Asians were inferior, they were subhuman. The Americans thought the Japanese were subhuman, the Japanese thought the other Asians were subhuman. Once you make somebody into being subhuman, you don't treat them as a human being anymore. And the Japanese did that to the Chinese, the Japanese did that to the Koreans, the Japanese did that to the Vietnamese, to the Malaysians, to the people in Singapore, and often to the Americans and British and Filipinos. So it's that same process of dehumanization that goes on in warfare to allow you to hate and kill the enemy. One of the big questions we raise sometimes in the United States is, would we have ever dropped those atomic bombs on Germany? We didn't treat the Germans in the same way as being subhuman during the war as we did the Japanese. And we don't know if we would have dropped it on Germany. Right from May 5th, 1943, the target was always Japan. And we said that's because if the bomb was a dud, then the Japanese would not learn so much from it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's the only reason why Japan was chosen as the target. Right? Germany surrendered before the bomb was ready. Would we have used it against Japan, against Germany? I don't know. Do you think we would have?
No, I don't think so. Unless we were desperate and Germany was winning the war. But that wasn't the case, because the Russians were winning the war as of 1942. And certainly by January 43, it was clear to many people that the Soviets had turned the tide.
I'm sorry, a lot of translation.
I'm just going to...
It's a lot to get here.
Summarize. 残酷さについてですけど、1980年代のグアテマラの時なんかにも日本がアジアに対して、日本がアジアに対して働いた残虐教育みたいなことはありました。どこでもあることなんですね。で、オリバー監督がベトナム戦争なんか行った頃はまだ1対1というか顔が見える戦争みたいなのがあったんですが、今はもう無人機攻撃でね、もう相手の顔を見なくてね、ゲーム感覚でできてしまうような、ものが 戦争になってきているわけですね。でもう一回、その残酷さに戻りますけれども、その日本は非常にプロパガンダがありまして、アメリカとすごく似てるところがありました。結局アメリカは日本をその虫けらとか猿とかそういう人間以下のものに見立てて、その残酷な行為をしやすくした心理を作っていたんですけど、日本もやっぱり他のアジアの隣国の人たちをそういうふうに見立てていたところで非常に似ているところがあります。それはもちろん中間だけではなくてベトナム、シンガポール、マレーシアなどに対しても行ったし、西側の補助に対しても行ったわけですね。だからそういう意味でもし原爆をねドイツにだったら落としてなかったんじゃないかみたいなことを質問がよく、それは人種主義と絡めてですね。ピーターが言ってたのは1943年の5月、最初から原爆の標的は日本だったということです。そういうことからやっぱり人種主義があるんじゃないか。でオリバー監督もやっぱりドイツが相手だったら落とさなかっただろうというようなことを今言っていました。
和之先生がね、お答えいただいたのは大変嬉しいんですけど、和之先生に今度あさってインタビューだから、できればオリバー監督に一言いただきたい。ちょっといいですか？
いいですよ。
一言僕がお聞きしたかったのは、そのような傾向を持つ国、周囲の民族を見下すような傾向を持っている国、それが帝国だと思います。マニフェスト・デスティニーを信じているような国、そういう性質を日本もアメリカも持ちながら今一体化しようとしているんですよ。非常に軍事的な一体化が進みつつある。これをとても危険な兆候だというふうに思っています。この点について、これくらいについて、これを一言お願いします。
We would also like a comment from you, Oliver. Such a country that looks down upon other countries. That's another characteristic of an empire, I believe. And as I said before, there's a small empire of Japan and larger empire of the United States. They are becoming more integrated in a military sense, and it's very dangerous. Can you comment on this trend?
ちょっと付け加えた方がいい。中国に対する脅威をしきりに煽りながら、そして、日本に危ないよと言って今兵器を買わせているわけですよ、アメリカは。
I don't. Hello. What do you ask for? What was the last thing?
中国の脅威、中国がすごく危険な存在になった。だから危ないぞ。日本は危ないぞというふうにアメリカはしきりに背中を押してるんです。そうやって日本の軍事化を進めていくんだけれども、それは大変な危険なゲームじゃないかということです。
Okay, how about for example, behind this increasing military integration between Japan and China, Japan and U.S. is a China threat.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so using that perception of China threat, Japan, U.S. is pushing Japan to remilitarize, reinforce.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where we're coming.
Yeah.
Can you comment on such?
The thing you see, I don't see Japan as the equal ally. Little empire, I don't know that you could say that, because Japan I would think of as a material empire, as a financial empire. It is one of the world's third largest economy. But it's, interestingly, the fourth largest military budget. So, yes, it is, I suppose, but it hasn't become yet a military empire. When you talk about a military force, I always think of Britain more than Japan. Maybe it's wrong, because Britain has always been the Americans' predominant ally. But Britain is like Japan, is a smaller island. It's an island country, a nation state. I never saw Japan as being the main ally in Asia. I always saw the American alliance as running as a ring from South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Taiwan I view as very important, because we sell so many big arms to Taiwan. Philippines is crucial landmass, and we have complete control, it seems, over the Philippine government. Japan, we have problems because the people are still restive about nuclear power and nuclear weaponry. And it's a sensitive point. And I think we can push Japan so far, and I think the people will respond. And I think we know that. We're not stupid. I'm sure the Okinawa issue is very sensitive because of the crashes and because of the rapes and the murders. And it's been written about. So I think that we're not stupid, but we are ruthless. And this new pivot is about all these countries. It goes down to Vietnam, to make an alliance with Vietnam, to make an alliance again, to send Marines to Australia. And we're looking for Singapore, and now I hear Thailand and Cambodia. I don't think the United States looks at China right now as the enemy, but it sees it as a growing Pentagon. The Pentagon sees it as a growing threat, very clearly. So what they're doing in Jeju Island in South Korea, which is where I came from before I went to Japan, Jeju is the most advanced military naval base probably in the Pacific right now. It will be. It's deep enough to accommodate the George Washington, which is the largest, most advanced nuclear aircraft carrier in the world. They will be able to go to Jeju, which is about less than 500 kilometers from Shanghai, and controls one of the major sea lanes. So South Korea is very important. So I think the American strategy, as Peter has said, is a lily pad strategy to have bases, advanced bases, islands in Diego Garcia. We have an alliance that I hear is brewing with India, which is a first and a shocking first, because for me India has always been independent. The reason the reason Nehru was not taken out of office, as were so many of his contemporary neutrals, was because they never allowed the U.S. military close to the Indian Army. And I think that's important to keep that in mind. But things are changing. So the U.S. is a vast international dragon with 1,000 bases, with lily pad strategy, very smart with drones, super drones, cyber warfare, full spectrum dominance. We don't need Japan as our partner. We need it as just part of the alliance. So if we're smart, we won't overplay our hand with Japan. You can add to that, I think.
日本はまだ帝国と言えるのかわからないです。物質的にはね、経済的には帝国と言えるのかもしれません。GDP は世界で3位なわけだし、ただ軍事的にもね、支出が世界4位なわけですが、まだ軍事的な帝国とは言えないんじゃないかと思います。私はアメリカの軍事的な荒い同盟というと、やっぱりイギリスの方をまず思い出します。まだ日本がアジアにおけるアメリカの中心的な同盟っていうふうには見たことはありませんでした。そうというよりももっと、アジア全体に広がってる、だから韓国、日本、フィリピン、ね、タイですね、でカンボジア、オーストラリア、そういったもっとチェーンになっているようなそういうアメリカの、
一部だと、
そういうアライの一部だというふうに思っていました。あとはメインポイントは何だか、だから私は中国をそんな脅威だとは思っていません。主にペンタゴンがそう思っているんじゃないかと思います。で私ここに来る前に韓国の最終島に行ってたんですけども、それは韓国太平洋でのそういう軍事強化の拠点、今最大重要地域の一つじゃないかと思います。ジョージ・ワシントン空母がね入るぐらいの深さを持っているもので、それは上海からの距離が500キロ以下という意味で近いものですね。もちろんアメリカは世界中に基地のネットワークを持っていて、ディエゴ・ガルシアとかもちろん沖縄の問題がありますねということですが、あとはあれですね、無人機だけじゃなくてサイバースペースとか宇宙とかそういうところにもアメリカが派遣を張り巡らしている。
I will add something to that. Japan has been the United States' most important ally in Asia since World War II, and especially since the Chinese Revolution in 1949. It is the equivalent of Israel in the Middle East to the United States. a country that's loyal, a country that accepts direction from the United States, a country that does a lot of the United States dirty bidding in the region. I'll just break it up.
Okay. 日本は第二次大戦以来、日本は非常にアメリカの大事な同盟国だったと思います。特に1949年のあれですね、中国の成立以来で、非常に似ているのがやっぱイスラエル、アメリカにとってイスラエルだと思います。その同盟のあり方としてね、まあ何でもアメリカの言うことを聞くという意味で。
And plays baseball.
野球っていう共通点もあります。
Although Ichiro is getting a little bit old now, the Yankees are not doing so well. In the early 1950s, the United States, the situation was troubling. In Vietnam, there was an uprising. In Malaysia, there was an uprising. In the Philippines, the Huck Rebellion was going on. And so the United States was very concerned because after China, the United States was afraid that all these countries were going to go communist and that Japan was going to lose all of its trading partners, and Japan was going to turn toward China and become communist also. So that was part of why the United States intervenes in Vietnam starting in the early 1950s, but especially in 1954 after the Dien Bien Phu. It's largely, we didn't care as much about Vietnam, but we cared a lot about Japan.
ベトナム戦争、要するにアジアの共産化を防ぐためにね、大きな動きの中でのベトナムっていうのがあるわけですけれども、やっぱその日本の共産化をすごく恐れていたっていうのもあって、だから日本の共産化への恐れはそのベトナム侵攻に非常に関連があるっていうのは、いろんなこと言ってましたけど、メインポイントはそういうことです。はい、じゃあ川崎さん、じゃあ次そちら。
Just one question to Oliver. How can we get rid of nuclear weapons from the world? And growing number of countries, together with mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and many other civil society groups, calling for global ban of nuclear weapons. Can you support such a move?
I thought you were going to ask me that tomorrow. That's not fair.
Yeah.
This is for them. You ask Peter the question. I want to know his answer. How are we going to get rid of him? He's a peace boat man.
Yes. We're going to put everybody on the peace boat. All the people in the world, like Noah's Ark to be Noah's peace boat, and we're going to brainwash them. How are we going to get rid of nuclear weapons? Well, in the United States, we have a job to do, and that's to put a lot of pressure on Obama to put his money where his mouth is, you know the expression, to actually follow through on all these pledges that he makes for nuclear abolition. And there is pressure. We've got